Welcome. Good morning. So I'm Sophie. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at Fairtrade International. Very happy to be moderating this session today. We will be joined by the Minister of Trade of Ecuador a bit later. She is running a bit late, which we can understand. Yesterday, I heard a lot about the links between trade and climate. And we really welcome in Fairtrade the coalition of ministers on trade and climate. But what I missed a bit was the social dimension. And for us, it's really key because we really see that trade justice and social justice and climate justice overlap. And actually, right now, it's rather trade, climate, and social injustice that we see. And there is some sort of a vicious circle where you see that environmental degradation and the climate crisis have a lot of impact on the productivity of smallholder farmers. And really, farmers are telling us that now one of the biggest risks they are facing is really this climate crisis. But at the same time, the prices that farmers get are too low to even cover their cost of production. And so this is for them really an incentive to produce in less sustainable way, which in turn also is going to worsen the climate crisis that we see. So what we want to do today with this session is really to dig a bit further on how those trade, social, climate concerns overlap, and also really to be constructive and to try together to identify policies to address those challenges. So the main question for me that I have for this session is really how can we better share the costs of the transition to more sustainable farming? And also, what are the policies that can really address this equity issue? And perhaps the first insight from the Fairtrade movement on this discussion is that we think we need a global Green Deal. So what we think in the Fairtrade movement is that we need to shift from the unilateral European Green Deal that we have seen over the last years towards a Green Deal that is more global, more social, more inclusive also of the realities of producers in the global south. And so this global Green Deal is really the main call that we are having as the Fairtrade movement for the EU elections that are happening in June. But, you know, I think Pamela said it yesterday morning in the opening. I think half of the population is voting this year. So this global Green Deal can also be a narrative for the world's election. Before we dig into this discussion, perhaps just a few words on fair trade, and I won't be long because we have less than 1 hour to cover a lot. So Fairtrade is both an NGO and a voluntary sustainability scheme. Our main mission is really to empower producers to ensure that they have decent livelihoods, that they can take control over their lives. We have 3 producer networks, one in Latin America, one in Africa, and one in Asia Pacific. And Pravakar, who is here with us, is the chair of the Asia Pacific Producer Network. We are quite well known for our minimum price and our premium, and both together, the premium and the price are really what provide stability for smallholder farmers to be able to invest to produce in a more sustainable way. We have standards on economic, social, and environmental issues. We also have programs, but I think, as the director of advocacy, that it's not certification and programs are not enough to change the world. And that's why we need to do also advocacy and to get the right policies in place. And we think that if the fair trade principles were ruling the way we do trade, we would see a world really where producers at least get a living income or a living wage, which is not a luxury. I think many of us in the room hope that our kids are going to get more than just a living income or a living wage. But a living income and a living wage is, for many farmers in the south, something that a target they cannot reach. So we think also that with fair trade principles, there will be much more attention to fair purchasing practices and also much more stakeholders engagement. So to discuss on those questions, we have three panels. As I said, Minister Sonsoles Garcia from Ecuador is going to join as soon as she can. We have Prabhakar Meher, who is the chair of NAP, or Asia Pacific Producer Network, and Escipion Joaquin Oliveira Gomez, did I say this well, who is the director of the division Enterprise, Competitiveness and Institutions at the International Trade Center. So huge thanks to both of you for being there. I will start with Prabhakar. Perhaps one thing before I start, I really want this to be like a discussion. So don't hesitate at any moment to also, I mean, any moment. Let's the speakers finish their sentence, and then you can really ask questions. You know, I will leave time for questions at the end, but you can also ask questions at any moment, so that, you know, it's like a discussion, because I think we all have interesting things to say into this debate. So starting with you, Prabhakar, first, what do you think are the really key challenges that cotton producers faced in, let's say, in South Asia, in terms of producing in a sustainable way? Just in a few words to launch the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Good morning. Okay, so you asked some challenges about the farmers, but when you talk of challenges in a farmer's life, I think it's a never-ending topic. It when you sit with the farmer, and it might continue from day to night, the farming itself is very challenging. But let's discuss some key challenges. Like the most alarming thing is, the farming is becoming unviable in nowadays. The cost of production and the price they realize from the produce and the income they make is it's really very alarming. It's very difficult for them to run their families with that income. And this leads to the next generation of the farmers. None of them are interested to involve in farming, and that's a very alarming. When the average age of the farmer in the global south is around 40, so we need next generation to grow food for us, for cotton for us. But at the same moment, we have the next generation who are least interested in the farming, as they see this profession as completely unviable. So it's a big question for us, all of us here, if this is the situation, where we'll get our food from. The next is, we all are discussing in this room, maybe like everywhere is discussion is climate change. It's it's very easy for us, to discuss climate change in air conditioned halls and discuss and to think of, these are the strategies we should. But at the farm level, when the farmer face that is the actual challenge. Like in the last, I think, 7 8 years, we haven't seen any increase in production. The major reason for this is climate change, because the rainfall pattern has changed a lot. It rains when it's least expected, and it doesn't rain when it is expected. We have frequent droughts, which leads to no loss of the production. And whatever, like you talk of technologies or anything, but in rain-fed areas, it's a fail, which ultimately leads to the loss of production. The next is fluctuating prices and demand. you know you have seen, like most of us seen and understand, the commodities, it are all, like controlled by some exchange or something. Like sometimes the prices are taken up like anything, and sometimes it crashes like anything. But when you talk in terms of farmer, they have a small window of 1 month or 2 months to sell their produce, because they have to recover the cost they have invested in the farms. And mostly what happens is, when the time comes, they need to sell their crop. Most of the chances are that that is the lowest price of the season, because they say that we have a lot of supplies. The other thing is lack of commitment. Like, see, like a farmer understand, because it's so difficult for him to think like, okay, this is the crop we should go for. But at the same time, he only believes that whatever I grow, it sells. They don't have a, like a assured market that where they need to sell it. So it's a lack of commitment. Next is pest and disease. Like it may be in news, many of us heard, like especially in cotton and rice, like we have a lot of pest and disease attack during the season. At one side we are saying at sustainable farming, and the other side, that is what prone to pest and diseases. So challenges are never ending, as I said. If you want me to continue, then just you have given me some time limits.
Thank you very much. No, and as I said, we want also to discuss in a constructive way about, okay, so those are the problems, what are the policies? No. So thank you very much. That's, I think we have a good overview. Just, and I don't want this session to be about self-promotion of fair trade, but just in a nutshell, what would you say still are the benefits that farmers get from being fair trade certified? Just in a few words. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. By supporting fair trade, we embrace a model, that ensures fair price to the farmers. So, fair trade itself has a system where they determine a minimum support price for an individual crop. They have some certain specific criteria, like to determine this price. So the system firstly is ensure a fair price of their produce to the farmer. Second is they ensure a fair trade premium. Like whatever product or commodity gets sold through fair trade, the system has, we have a system like the farmers receive a fair trade premium back, which might be, like some percent of the commodity prices. And that is to invest in the community's socio-economic development. Fairtrade promotes sustainable practices. It talks about, maintaining biodiversity, managing, like uh, restricted use of chemicals and pesticides. It's also promotes social responsibilities. It's social responsibility in terms it ensure, like the social issues, like in the communities. It also talk of, like the wages, how the laborers are treated. So these are some core principles it which Fated ensures. And it also ensures a physical, it's not only limited to the producers. As a buyer also, we can ensure within the fair trade, we can ensure a physical proper transparent traceability of our product. Like we have an opportunity to understand who are the suppliers in the whole supply chain from the farmers. And it fated also ensures the last of the ensure the price and the wages received by the last member, that's the worker who are working in the farms, are they also getting the right prices or not. So it's a platform, like it's a system which ensures a sustainability and a fair price system throughout the supply chains.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, I mean, I think the system works well, but we work with 2 million producers in the world, and what we want to see actually is really trade overall to become more fair. And for that, we need policies. So perhaps just in one word, what would be, Pravakar, the regulation you would like to see in priority?
At the moment, like the priority should be on, basically on the imbalance power or the economic power, what we say. Because you see the owners of the bank, big owners, the house and house of farmer, and you can understand what are the imbalance. And this is the need of the hour, like because you are asking the last member in the supply chain to work the hard to the most toughest part, do the most the toughest part, that is the farming, and getting paid the least. So this is the thing, like this is the major concern. It should, we should think of, because it's also it should be a social responsibility to understand, like the member who is working the hardest, toiling in soils, and what is he getting? Just peanuts. And next is, we all are, like aligned in this, but I don't know how are we taking this. The next is about climate change. because if we talk, it doesn't work. We have to do something very seriously, because now almost we are in a point, like, if we don't take any steps further, we won't have any chance to return back where we were some years back. So, so it's a very serious concern. And the last is, we need to also talk of the regulations. It's not about now European Union or the developed nations talking about. Even the developing nations has to align themselves along with them. Like, because in certain countries, you won't even expect, they don't have regulations or a minimum wages for the farmer who are working on the farms.
Thank you. Escipion, from what you've heard from Prabhakar, so first, any reaction to that? And perhaps also, if you can tell us already a bit more on how you see the role of ITC in supporting SMEs, really also from this lens of sustainable production, how to support them to produce in a sustainable way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First, I want to sincerely thank Fairtrade for the invitation and for the good work you're trying to do, or doing, sorry, in promoting, in promoting global welfare. I come from one of the 20 most beautiful and nicest countries in the Caribbean, and I have one dream. My dream is that tomorrow, agriculture is not synonymous to poverty in the developing world. Nowadays, it's the case. And we're all working together towards that goal. And ITC is headed by my boss, Pamela Cook Hamilton, which you mentioned her words, and that's what we're trying to do. To accomplish this, trade rules must be developed together. That was the reason that WTO was created. So what we're really trying to do is to ensure that farmers have a say when we develop trade rules. We work at 3 levels in ITC to accomplish that. We work at the macro level with policy. In order to be able to do policy, you need stats, you need data. Our public goods in ITC are well known, and they give you a good impression on what's happening on the ground. So with that knowledge and data, we assist governments to talk to the private sector with a view of putting in place policies that take care of their problems, and we hope also that we can achieve this at an international level. In fact, some of the trade rules that were mentioned by my colleague that the European Union did have revision clauses. We hope to be able to work with the European Union and the countries that have been affected to be able to take into account during the review process what has happened. It's almost impossible to go into a review process of those rules if you don't have data. How were people affected? In this sense, we are working strongly with the European Union in accompanying measures for those rules. And one of my primary goals is to identify the bottlenecks. We also, in order to be able to support development, we need to work with business support organizations. Most business support organizations on the ground in developing countries is like a snake that bites its tail. Given that they don't have enough funds to give services, nobody pays funds to them, and it's like a cycle that we have to break. So what we try to do is train them and accompany them so that they can deliver services on the ground. And this is the way of multiplying. The third one is really working directly with companies. We work with many producers throughout the world, in Africa, in Asia, in the Caribbean, in South America, to allow them to fulfill their obligations with regards to traceability and all of those things. So when we accompany when we help these companies, we're always shadowed by a business support organization, because they are the ones that will reproduce it many times in the country or the region. I think that one of the challenges that we're really facing today, and I have seen it in my travels in Africa and the Caribbean from my previous job, is that farmers are leaving the farms. And that is a major issue. How can we work in I would say, in the generational transition? How can we make agriculture sexy again? If that word is allowed, I don't know if that word is allowed in this, because we need agricultural production, and food security is of the utmost importance. One of the things that might help to solve that is the living income differential. being promoted by Fairtrade, but also being promoted by countries like Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire that for the first time have worked together to have a minimum price for cocoa. And in discussions in a previous lifetime with the minister of Cote d'Ivoire, they want to expand it to cashew as well. So I do believe that this is the things that will help us really achieve this. In the work that we do with companies, we also help them to install, we work a lot in technology, and we try to assure that companies have the adequate technology so they can have traceability. Traceability depends a lot in technology. We work a lot with quality institutes. For example, recently, we helped 2 laboratories from Burundi to get certified by the European Union, which was a big thing, because you need local knowledge and local services. And the things that we need for the SMEs that we have found is affordable finance. In our countries, there's a lot of money, but that money is never invested in agriculture because agriculture is seen as a big risk. So if you have a supermarket and you want funds, everybody, you're going to buy, you're going to sell, you get money. If you're going to tell a bank that you're going to invest and it will take 5 years for your plant to grow and things like that, they will go crazy. So part of the work that we're doing is try to ensure that there's affordable finance and be that kind of, I would say, translator between the business people and the banks so that because they speak different languages. Banks don't speak what agriculturers speak, and agriculture people don't speak what banks speak. So we try to do that link. And we are also promoting services, like I said, labs, but also cold storage facilities, which are of the utmost importance. If you want to preserve the food, most of the losses happening in agriculture happening in post-harvest dealing. So we're really training people in post-harvest, promoting cold storage, and promoting best practices through South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. In this quest, we have the privilege to be supported by the European Union, by the UK, by countries like the Netherlands, Korea, and other ones that really help us work. And I would like maybe to end with 2 things. First, that we need to take care of the environment, definitely. And there's a song from Maná, which is a Mexican group that talks about how his grandfather used to swim in clean rivers and walk through forests. This is what we want for our children. But at the same time, people have to live today. You cannot put people in the situation of not living today. So paying fair prices for agriculture will allow farmers to take care of the land, because at the end of the day, it's the farmers and the fishermen that take care of the land and the sea. And maybe the last thing is that also something that is very dear to me is ensuring that we document and protect traditional knowledge of farming and fishing, because that traditional knowledge help preserve the land and help preserve the seas. And it seems sometimes that everything that is good comes from abroad and not from our countries. I would like to say, many times we say that people from the developing world are not innovative, that we have no innovation and things like that. Any person from my country that has never taken a bath with a tin can as a shower is not from my country, because we had to do it, all of us. To serve an SME to survive in our countries has to be innovative every single day. So what we need to do is relieve the pressure what they have today on the prices to allow them to put that energy into other ways and protect the land and have a better future. I always end my interventions with an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we were trying to do with Fairtrade and our partners, European Union, UK, and other donors, is to go together towards a better world. Thank you very much, and sorry if I was too long.
Thank you so much, Escipion. And yes, we definitely want to go together and a bit fast, given the climate crisis is very urgent. Thank you so much. Perhaps 2 things that you mentioned that I just want to react briefly on. So you mentioned also at the end this importance of indigenous knowledge, and you know, in Fairtrade International, we have adopted a bit more than 1 year ago a policy on sustainable agriculture, and the direction we are taking is agroecology. And agroecology is also about that. It's also about using all this traditional knowledge and merging it with the innovation, the innovative techniques. And for me, I mean, I'm very proud actually that Fairtrade is taking this direction, and it's actually much more political than people think, because it's really also about food system transformation. And for this transformation, we will really need all hands on deck. So, and we know that we can count on the also on the support from ITC. And a second thing that you mentioned that is really key is also this revision of EU regulations and directive and data. And why is it very important? It's because one of the key asks of the fair trade movement is on the revision of the Unfair Trading Practices Directive in agri-food system. And we think that for the revision of this directive, the Commission really needs to take into consideration the impact of the directive in the period so far, and the impact of the directive in its partner countries. So for the moment, we think that there is not enough attention on how this directive has been implemented for farmers in the global south. And if we want this directive to be revised in the right way and to ensure that it's prohibited to sell, to buy products at a price that is below the cost of production, then we really need to hear the voices of producers in the south. So thank you for that. I stopped there just to check whether there are any questions so far for our panelists. As I said, really don't hesitate. Yeah, thank you. Is there a mic? Yeah, wonderful. Perhaps you can raise a bit more up so that, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Fernando Gido Amaral, working for Minister of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Forestry.
Sorry, from which country?
Yeah, Timor-Leste. I would like to make a general comment. Then you can replay if something interests for you to replay. Let me start with a small project that we have carried out several years ago with the Fairtrade project. We have only 100 farmers that involved in a Fairtrade, and it's really helping our poor people because it's fixed a minimum price of $3.09 US, which is very, very good. And this fair trade is really educative for our farmers because it's not only earning income, but they have a additional responsibility that's very, very important, how to look after environment, and then gender equality. But for us, for the sustainability, it's we worry because sometimes farmers must pay very expensive for certification. So ITC, please think about this. And then also in terms of technology, because not all are in East Timor access to electricity, energy. So let us think about how we can facilitate the harvest and post-harvest, which is more introduced technology that may be more kinetic technology to help them. Without electricity, they still can guarantee a quality of coffee quality, because you know that sometimes changing in regulation, EU regulation for food safety. It was in 2012. We have a big debate in London because they came up with let's say that they insist for high quality. It was, if I'm not wrong, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But previously it was 20-something ppm of ochratoxin contamination. They would like to bring down it to 15 to 16. We say that we are producing country. We don't agree because if you insist the high quality, it's mean that we have to negotiate the final price. Otherwise, you give us a extra work, but the price is still the same. Then what going to happen? More our people will leave the. For the long term, because coffee is more than 30% our population rely on coffee industry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
very much.
so this is my my general comment. But we need training as a capacity building. We need also some technology that support our coffee farmers in upland areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Reaction from Escipion and Prabhakar? Thank you.
Thank you very much. For me, Timor-Leste is a special country in my heart because when you joined the ACP, I was in the room. I used to work in the ACP, and I remember that day very well. About technology, we're trying to work with technology, mobile technology that is available at different times, so you don't always have to be connected. The problem with technology is not that it's not available, it's that it has to be affordable for the farmers. So really trying to work, for example, yesterday, we signed an agreement with Microsoft here in WTO. So we're really trying to work towards that. Are we there yet? Not necessarily. But I believe, and you said many things that I agree, farmers from our countries cannot compete in high volumes and low prices. We have to compete in quality, specificity. This is why the fair trade price is good, but also we have to go into denominations of origin, geographical indicators, and transform our farmers into business people. First, you have to know your market. You don't sell coffee the same way in Japan that you will sell it in Europe. Even the colors of because I worked a lot in coffee for my country, even the packaging that you do has to be specific colors to attract and things like that. So what we try to do is to work towards that. And I must say that in my negotiations with the European Union, they are quite open. We were faced once to a problem a year ago between Comoros and Madagascar with a new rule that it was nicotine levels on vanilla. It was done for something as well, fruit with seeds, and it affected vanilla. In my previous job, we approached the Commission, engaged negotiations, and the Commission in less than 3 months reviewed the regulation to allow continuation of exports, and then I left. But anyway, hopefully we'll support now those two countries to ensure that those nicotine levels are come down, because at the time we had no idea why there was so high nicotine levels. Well, high nicotine levels. It was not really high, but the soil was, that just was low in vanilla. So this is the things that we were doing, and also discussions that we had in child labor. At one moment, the European Union wanted to use terms for child labor that were specific. Yeah, sorry. No, por favor, excelencia. De la jefa. So in negotiations, we were able to ensure that the European Union abided by ILO rules, International Labour Organization. So I think that there's always a need for dialogue, and that the European Union is there, from my experience, to talk, but they cannot talk with each country individually. This is where Fairtrade comes in, my previous organization, which is the ACP group, comes, and ITC comes, because we collectively organize people to discuss common things. And again, everything has to do with data. You cannot go into a meeting and trade negotiation and say, I am affected by this rule. You have to come, I'm affected by this rule because bang, 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 and then you find a solution. And this is why we're trying to work with governments toward having those stats to have these solutions. And sorry, I always speak too long.
No, thank you very much, Escipion. And before so thank you so much, Minister, for joining us. And before I put you under the spot, I just want Prabhakar, the chair of NAP, perhaps to respond to the person from Timor-Leste, as you are the chair of the Asia Pacific Network. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you a lot. Actually, I was quite happy, like to hear someone from Timor-Leste, especially from the government side. This is what earlier I was mentioning, that we need, Fairtrade need more partnership, as you know, like when you talk of technology and everything, because we also need to understand the local practices. already, like as a network in Asia Pacific, we have partnered with Sri Lankan government in with Indonesian universities. So I think after this meeting, we can have a discussion because we already have a coffee development fund specifically for the coffee producers in our network. So we can discuss how we can take this further. We are happy to assist you, and this is what we have been looking for. Now the next step, as like, because Fairtrade can't do everything running, like we need partnerships. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, really, we're very grateful that you take the time for joining us. We know you have a very busy agenda. So perhaps the first thing I wanted to ask you is that a few weeks ago, there was an association of producers of banana from Ecuador who came to meet us, and they were telling us that it's very difficult for them to make progress on producing in a more sustainable way and paying living wage in a context where the norms don't apply to all countries in the region, but also because companies don't commit in the long term to pay fair prices. So that makes it also difficult for producers of banana in Ecuador, but it's not only for banana, and I guess not only for Ecuador. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see your role as trade, production, fisheries minister in really supporting access to markets for SMEs, but also supporting access to market for them to sell, let's say, in a fairer way, so to be able to produce in a sustainable way and find the market for this sustainable production. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I was late. I was in bilateral. So, before I answer, I would like to give a little speech on how Ecuador has become a partner in Fairtrade and how it's been working with other international organizations. So I stand before you to highlight the crucial role of inclusivity in advancing sustainable trade policies. Our gratitude extends to all stakeholders, including local governments, non-governmental organizations, and the vibrant community of fair trade actors. Their continuous involvement enriches our collective efforts, bringing diverse experience and perspectives to the forefront of policy development. Inclusivity isn't just a principle, it's a necessity. It ensures that our policies are not only effective but also equitable. Fair trade, in particular, embodies this approach by emphasizing responsibility in concrete implementation steps. It's a movement that sensitizes and elevates the role of local governments, encouraging their active participation alongside civil society in both policy making and implementation. This collaboration is pivotal in fostering a more inclusive and sustainable trade environment. As policymakers, our duty extends beyond the facilitation of trade. It's about enabling small holders and producers of sustainable goods and services to thrive. This means lowering trade barriers and leveraging incentive, digital tools, and a solid regulatory framework that supports fair trade actors. Those who champion sustainable practices, contributing to our environmental and social objectives. For its part, Ecuador is committed to sustainability and environmental protection. Therefore, we are part of and as co-leader of the Coalition of Trade Ministers on Climate. Ecuador recognizes the increasing pace and impact of the climate crisis on economic, societies, and environment. Promoting sustainable consumption and production is the way global trade can build back for global food supply chains. Consumers that are sensitized and aware of what they purchase daily determine the products that are commercialized in the market. To have this, we need to have public policies that promote responsible consumption habits and strengthen the organizations of small producers with a sustainable production. In Ecuador, we have fair trade policies that has 4 pillars. First, strengthening the fair trade regulatory and institutional framework. Second, fostering and promoting fair trade. Third, improving commercialization process at the national and international levels. And fourth, strengthening fair trade organizations and companies. Ecuador's policy is based on the International Fair Trade Standard that has environmental sustainability as one of its principles. Therefore, trying this to convened the second ministerial meeting of the Coalition of Trade Ministers on Climate. This assembly underscored the need for a collective, coordinated response to the climate crisis. The challenges faced by developing countries, least developed countries, small, vulnerable economies, and small island developing states are mounting. Addressing these challenges through trade is not only an ethical and fair choice, but an economically sound one as well. Our commitment is not just in words, but in actions. We are implementing our statement with concrete actions and proposals that drive us towards a collaborative and holistic approach. Our roadmap for 2024 with the coalition is ambitious, focusing on concrete actions that reflect our priorities for the coming year. One of our primary goals is to foster partnership on trade and trade policies that champion climate action. That includes building alliances with stakeholders and funding actors committed to development and climate agendas. By doing so, we can amplify our impact and drive significantly progress in the fight against climate change. Moreover, we aim to support the climate resilience development priorities of small, vulnerable economies and LDCs. This includes focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises, sustainable agriculture, and biotrade. These are not only contribute to economic growth, but also ensure that development is sustainable and resilient to climate change. We recognize the immense potential for partnership and collaborative effort with diverse stakeholders. Our approach is one of openness and readiness to listen. We want to understand how we can work together to advance the nexus of trade, environment, and sustainable development. Our message today is one of unity and action. Together, we can forge a path that leverages trade as a tool for sustainable development, climate action, and inclusive growth. Let us embrace this opportunity to collaborate, innovate, and drive meaningful change for our planet and its people. Thank you. And in terms of your question, Ecuador has fair trade policies, as I already said. And I think we have building right now with the IDB some programs to access markets for SMEs and MSMEs, because we have more of the most of our producers in Ecuador, the farmers, are micro producers. And one of the things that we are doing right now is trying to have them associated, because we've seen that when they associate, they are more powerful in a group than individually. And we've seen that collective actions are more meaningful for the government, and they take a greater impact than individual actions. And banana growers, especially organic banana growers, I think they've been in this path for sustainable agriculture quite a while, and they have to go through diverse governments and diverse government visions. That right now we have a president that he comes from the private sector, he comes from the banana business, and he's very compromised with sustainable agriculture, and he knows that the collective actions are much more greater impact than the individual actions. So right now we are working together with non-governmental organizations and with the IDB in order to have programs that can help MSMEs to export and to have, the fair trade policies in place. But it's also, I think that, the more developed countries have to have policies where they integrate also the fair trade as one of their main goals, because it's not only for us as developing economies to have fair trade policies. They are the ones who buy the product from us. They're one who is consuming. So they have to be committed in fair trade consumption, as we are as developing economies in fair trade policies and sustainable agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is really a key point, and this is also what we are trying to achieve. I see a question in the back. Yeah, let's take this question, and then I will have a last one. Yeah, thank you.
Beat Rösli from Swiss Farmers Union. Thank you so much, especially to the two gentlemen, that you're fighting so much for good prices for farmers. It's also for us important. The most important fair trade policy in Switzerland are tariffs and quotas, who will increase domestic prices for sensitive products and hinder dumping price products coming into our country. But at the same time, for banana, coffee, and cocoa, we have free trade. So this is not hindering your products. But what I wonder is, do you think the deforestation regulation of the European Union, is it fostering fair trade? And will it lead to better prices for producers?
Thank you very much. Key question. I think everyone wants to answer it. Let's start with the minister. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we really don't know how the regulation is going to affect us, because they haven't said yet how they're going to review our path in deforestation. We've been working since 2017 in not having deforestation in our crops, but still, we only have, in some of our crops, especially in cocoa, we have only associated 1% of the production. Cocoa is mainly compounded by very, very micro producers. And most of them, they're afraid of being in an association because they think that somebody's going to come and take their crop away and not pay them the fair price. And I think, the EU has trying to make efforts in Ecuador, especially, in see how we can work on traceability. But I think that still we have adapt with this type of micro farmers, that we ask them to be on fair trade, and they have to pay the minimum wage, and they have to do all these requirements, not have this type of fertilizer, and they have to use natural fertilizers, and they have to buy natural fertilizer from all over the world, and it's more expensive. And we have put on them so much responsibility. And I think once more, Ecuador has met the requirements of the EU that are very high standards. And that's why Ecuador has won 3 years in a row the best organic producer of bananas. And I think that's, a thing to recognize in the compromise of Ecuador and Ecuador government in implementing fair trade framework, and also helping and building programs for the small and medium-sized farmers. But still, there's a lot of work to do. Most of these people they live in very unconventional ways, and they do not have the minimum to be supported, and still we're putting more pressure on them. And most of them, especially in the Amazon, they do not have even internet. So how they are going to be connected? And we as a government, we have challenges, we know. And the thing is that we do not want these to be barriers of trade, so our products get to the European Union. We are one of the main suppliers of cocoa to the big Belgium chocolate producers, and you've seen, the chocolate made in Belgium, but it's made with Ecuadorian cocoa. So, and we are very proud of it. And there's nowhere in the label you can see that, but still we know as Ecuadorians that we are part of that supply chain. But I think that it's taken a lot of pressure in this really micro and small farmers, the whole EU regulations, and I think we need a little bit more of time in order to meet the requirements.
Thank you so much. This is really a core question. So I don't know, Escipion and Pravakar briefly, and then I'll have a last final question.
Yes, this is a very good question. In fact, ITC is working with the government of Spain to do a platform to help Latin American producers specifically to understand the rules and abide by them. Because part of the problem is that people do not know the rules and do not know how to apply them. So you have to do technical assistance to accompany them. I will not mention, and I already talked about the revision, but now that in 2 years, because the regulation most likely will be starting next year, our role is to help business continuity, and we're working towards that. And that implies working all together, not necessarily, like the minister, that's another fight that the minister will have. Our role in ITC is to work with both parties to ensure business continuity. And I would like to say that we also receive a lot of help from Switzerland, Michael, which will also help, appreciate. And maybe say one last thing, because we haven't spoken about women here, but women have specific problems when they are in farming. In many countries, women don't have access to land ownership. And if you don't have access to land ownership, you cannot go to a bank. So we're working closely with women. This is something very dear to ITC. And in fact, we launched a special fund with the United Arab Emirates and WTO on women farming here 2 days ago. So this is something very dear to us, and ITC is here to serve. Thank you.
Pravakar, and then I will conclude because actually we are running out of time.
So I'll talk in terms of fair trade, right? So I think already, this EU regulations what we are talking of, already we have it in some of our standards, like we are already been talking about deforestation and carbon sequestration long back. But now as the regulation is coming up, I think, see, when you talk of in terms of producers, they understand the sustainability and protection of environment, because they can see the challenges, like what they are facing, like if they don't come with. Because now when I was discussing with some producers that, okay, these are the things coming in. So somewhere, like laughing, they were saying that we were forced to grow more by using chemicals. Now we are again being told to come back to the traditional way of farming. This is what we were doing some decades earlier. So it's not that, like farmers are not interested or something. They are happy to learn that we have made others understood, though it took a lot of time, but they understood what the practices the traditional methods we are using was the right way. They were quite happy. So, but now the questions is, with all this coming in, they also need a lot of investments, like now you need to geotags everything, the locations and all in terms of deforestation. So the burning question is, who pays for this?
Yeah, which brings us back to the question I was asking at the beginning. So how can we get the policies that really enable a shared burden? And I'm coming again with this idea of a global Green Deal, and I think a lot of what I heard is really contributing to that idea that we need really stakeholder participation. We need the policies to be designed with all those stakeholders from the very beginning. We didn't discuss the trade and sustainability chapters in trade agreements, but they are key, and there needs really to be commitment there. Support measures to comply on those legislation. Data, Escipion, you mentioned data, and that's really absolutely key, and that's also linked to all the traceability, transparency efforts. support to SMEs. You mentioned, Minister, that inclusivity is not only a principle, it's a necessity, and that's for me key. Gender, I'm very happy actually that it came from one of the two gentlemen in the panel. Thank you. And just to finish, so I really think that to get there, we need really all the most influential people to really put all hands on deck. And I think really the coalition of trade ministers on climate is really a good direction for that. And I will finish with what you said, Escipion, that I think we really have, if we have all those commitments, we can really make agriculture sexy again. So thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you.